Hi folks, HR Funk here. With a video that's been a long time coming, what I'm going to be doing today is finally reviewing my Smith & Wesson Performance Center Model 19 Carry Comp revolver. And some of you know the drama that has surrounded this little wheel gun since I first purchased it over a month ago. The short version of the story is there were some problems with it and it had to go back to Smith & Wesson for repair, and it's now back with me. If you don't know that story and you want to, I'll post a couple of links in the comments section to this video. But now I'm finally going to be able to get on with the review of this revolver. And my original plan was to do one long video where I talked about all the specifics of the Model 19 Carry Comp. Then I was going to compare it to my older 2.5-inch Model 19 and my 3-inch Model 66 Combat Magnums. And then I was going to go out to the range and do some shooting. But I've decided instead to break that down into 3 different parts. So in this first part, I'm going to be taking an in-depth look at the Model 19 Carry Comp and showing you all of its features and functions. I'm also going to be making one small change to it that you'll see as we go along. And I'll finally be able to give you the in-depth review that a lot of you have been waiting for. So without further ado, let's take the up-close look at my Model 19 Carry Comp. And as promised, here is that close-up look at my Model 19 Carry Comp revolver. I've mentioned several times in past videos that I am a big fan of the Smith & Wesson Model 19. I think its history is cool, its association with Bill Jordan is cool, and I think it really combines the best attributes of a fighting revolver in terms of carryability, power, and reliability. And there's really just not much more you can ask of a fighting revolver than you get from a Smith & Wesson Model 19. Now, some of you know historically there was a concern with the Model 19 and the Model 66 and their long-term durability in terms of holding up to a steady diet of 357 Magnum ammunition, and that has largely been cured in this newer generation of Model 19s, and I'll get into that shortly. But as you can see, this revolver has a 3-inch barrel. Now, I'm expecting ballistics closer to my 2.5-inch Model 19, and I'll get into that in part 2 of this video. But the last half-inch or so of this barrel really is an expansion chamber for the compensator, and I'll show you a close-up view of that shortly too. The revolver is a 6-shot Model 19, which all Model 19s are. And I'm going to start a top-down look at all the different features of this revolver in just a moment, but I wanted to first give you just a close-up view of what it looks like from the side, and I'll flip it around so you can see the other side too. And there's a look at the Carry Comp revolver from the starboard side. As you can see, it does have the Smith & Wesson 357 Magnum stamping in the barrel, and I'll flip it back around to the other side quick to show you. This side simply shows Performance Center, and it has the Smith & Wesson Performance Center logo, which I'll try to focus on a little bit better there. It does come with very nice rosewood grips that you can see there. These are boot grips, and this is the one thing, and I'll talk about this shortly, that I'm going to be changing about this revolver. Starting my top-down look at the features of the Model 19 Carry Comp, you can see the front ramp sight, and this ramp sight is serrated to help cut down any kind of glare. And also it has a tritium insert that you can see right there to give you night sight capabilities. And I'm going to turn the shop lights down momentarily and try to give you a look at what that tritium insert looks like in a low light circumstance. And there you get an idea of just how bright that front night sight is. I have not turned all the lights down, but I have lowered them here in the shop, and you can see it's glowing very brightly and it's very easy to see. So that's a nice addition, particularly for a defensive revolver, and it's one that I'm glad the Model 19 Carry Comp incorporates. And one last point about the front sight before I move on is that, as you can see, it is pinned in place. So if you want a different type of front sight, or if the tritium insert wears out to the point that you can't see it anymore and you need to replace it, it's a fairly easy matter to swap it out and put in a new front sight blade. Moving on to the rear sight, you can see that it is Smith & Wesson's micrometer adjustable rear sight with a plain black blade, And this is one thing that I would prefer to be different. I would rather have the white outline around that rear notch just to help define it a little bit better and make it a little bit easier to make sure that you're picking up the front sight properly. That's one thing that I changed with my 3-inch Model 66. Again, I'll show that in video number 2 in this series. The top strap of the Carry Comp revolver, as you can see, is grooved to reduce glare. And the entire revolver is finished in a non-reflective matte black, or matte bluing I should say, which is reminiscent of the old Model 28. And while it doesn't look as good as a high polished bluing finish, the one thing I like about this is this revolver is going to be carried and shot a lot, and I don't have to worry about this finish if it gets a little bit of wear use or holster wear or what have you. I'm just not concerned about this finish. Moving forward to the muzzle, and I'll try to get that in focus a little bit better. This is the comp part of the Carry Comp revolver. As I mentioned earlier, this is a compensator that is integral to the barrel to help reduce muzzle rise while firing hot .357 Magnum ammunition. And I'm really looking forward to seeing just how well this compensator works. I've had a couple of other Smith & Wesson revolvers with similar compensators, but they have not been .357 Magnums, and they have not been revolvers of this size. So I'm really looking forward to that just to see how efficient that compensator is. The hammer spur is checkered, and you can see it is the newer teardrop style hammer spur. And this is one of Smith & Wesson's newer revolvers that no longer has the firing pin, or actually the hammer nose, built into the hammer itself. Rather, it has the firing pin built into the frame, and you can see that there. The thumb piece for the cylinder release is also the newer design. For some shooters with the traditional thumb release, or thumb piece rather, under recoil, that thumb piece would abrade their thumb, and the newer design helps to reduce that possibility. Also, we can see the hole there for the key lock. Some people get very concerned about that. I can pretty easily ignore it. And I'm also not terribly concerned about the lock somehow setting itself and preventing the revolver from functioning. You hear those reports once in a while, but I plan on shooting this extensively, and I'm going to make sure that I don't have to worry about that. But I've had 1 or 2 other revolvers with this feature, and I've never had an issue with it. Again, I just simply ignore it. One other comment about the lock: there are some firearms owners out there who prefer that because they have small children and they like the ability to lock their revolver so it's not going to function without them unlocking it. So I do want to point that out, that there are a few people out there who do consider that particular feature an asset. As I said, this is a 6-shot revolver, as you can see there, and it features a new style lockup. Unlike many of the traditional revolvers that locked the cylinder at the front of the extractor, or extractor rod I should say, there is no locking feature in this forward portion of the barrel shroud. Rather, there is a detent right here. Now, again, see if I can get that to focus. I'm having problems with my focus today for some reason. And you can see that detent, which is spring-loaded, locks into a recess. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you this or not, but there is a recess right here that ball detent locks into to lock the front of the cylinder. The rear of the cylinder does still lock with the center pin of the cylinder, and this ostensibly strengthens the lockup of the revolver. This is an upgrade according to Smith & Wesson. When I get out and start actually shooting it, I'll make that determination for myself. Now let's talk about an engineering change made to these newer Combat Magnum revolvers that I think basically does away with that concern that I mentioned a while ago over shooting a steady diet of .357 Magnum ammunition. And I'll be able to demonstrate this when I compare this to my older Combat Magnums. But the bottom of the barrel, right here, right below the forcing cone, was relieved on the older revolvers in order to allow the cylinder to close properly. And on this newer revolver, this portion of the frame has been enlarged slightly so that the full diameter barrel can protrude through the frame. The old revolvers reportedly would crack right at that point that they were relieved at the bottom of the barrel after enough .357 Magnum ammunition was cycled through them, and this should do away with any concern. Now, having said that, I'll also say I think that concern was largely overstated, and I also think it mainly had to do with very hot 125 grain .357 Magnum ammunition. My older revolvers have mostly seen a steady diet of 158 grain .357 ammo, and they have never suffered any damage as a result. Even so, as I said, this particular engineering change should do away with that. And we can also see, and this will become apparent when I compare it to the older revolvers, that there is a change to the gas ring and to the yoke in the front of the cylinder to allow it to fit properly in this newly re-engineered frame. The trigger, as you can see, has an over-travel stop, which is a nice feature, and the single action pull feels very good. You can see there is very, very little movement there of the trigger for a single action shot. The double action pull is a little on the heavy side, but it's smooth, and I'm going to be checking that double action pull shortly and see just exactly where that trigger is breaking. Hopefully it'll register on my Lyman trigger pull scale, but that scale does have a limit of 12 pounds, and this might exceed that. And the last feature I'll mention are these grips again, or maybe I should say grip panels, that look very, very good. And were it not for one thing, I would just stick with these grips and not make any changes to them. But the one thing I don't care for is that they are a boot grip style, and my little finger doesn't have a place to rest, and I just don't care for that. For maximum concealability, this would be the way to go, but I prefer to have somewhere for my little finger, so I'm going to make that change right now. Now, the Carry Comp revolver does come from the factory with a set of replacement rubber grips that you can see here. Those are in the box with the revolver, and these grips do have a place for my little finger to rest, and I'm sure they are perfectly functional and they feel pretty good, but I just don't care for the way they look. Call me vain if you will. I just don't want to put a set of rubber grips on this particular revolver. So I did purchase a set of the Ultimate laminate grips that you can see here, and these also have a place for my little finger to rest. And while they might not be quite as spongy as the rubber grips, I think they look a whole lot better. So I'm going to be replacing those on my revolver right now, and when I start the camera again, we'll see how it looks with its new set of grips. And there's a look at my Carry Comp revolver with its new set of grips. And one nice thing about the Ultimate grips is they come with 3 different length grip screws, and the one that was originally installed in there was too long, so I put the shorter screw in, and it's not protruding as far from the other side of the grip, so I much prefer it. So just a quick shout out to Ultimate. Thanks for having that much attention to detail. Okay folks, the next thing I'm going to be doing is checking the timing on this as yet unfired Carry Comp revolver. And I'll check double action first and then single action. And what I'm going to be doing is cycling the revolver very slowly and making sure that each chamber locks in place before the hammer falls. Well, before the hammer falls in double action mode and before the hammer completely locks to the rear in single action mode. So here we go with our double action timing check. And we heard that lock. There's 2 that locked. 3, 4, 5, and 6. Next, I'll check the single action. Again, we want to make sure that the cylinder is locked And you should be able to hear the click when it locks in place. There's one chamber, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So the timing is good. Next, I'll check the lockup. And there is very little movement, either fore and aft or rotational. And the lockup is very good. No problems whatsoever with that. The next thing I'm going to do, mostly to satisfy curiosity, is to check the barrel cylinder gap. And I'll start out with a 3/1000th feeler gauge. And 3/1000ths won't fit in there. So interesting. This is going to be a very tight gap. Let's go down to 25/10,000ths. And that one just fits. So basically a 2.5 1/1000ths inch gap between the barrel and cylinder. That's extremely tight, and that's what I would expect from a Performance Center revolver. Next, I want to see if I can get a trigger pull weight on the Carry Comp revolver. Now this is a Performance Center tuned action, and it feels very smooth, if a little on the heavy side. So I'll be interested to see if I can get a reading. I did get a pull off camera that was just under 12 pounds. And there we go. That's about 11.5 pounds there. See if I can get one more. So it's not an exceptionally light double action trigger, although as I said, it is smooth. And it's a little bit lighter. That came in at just under 11 pounds. Try to get one more. And just over 11 pounds. So about an 11 pound to an 11.5 pound double action trigger pull. And let's try the single action pull. This should be considerably better than the double action, or at least considerably lighter. And I think I overpulled it slightly. I think it actually broke just below 4 pounds. Let's try it again. See if we can get a better pull this second time. And yes, just under 4 pounds. I'll try one more. And that time was just over 4 pounds. So about a 4 pound single action pull. Again, not extremely light either on double action or single action, but it is a brand new revolver and as yet unfired. So I'm sure after I cycle it a few thousand times and run a few hundred rounds of ammunition through it, that trigger pull is going to improve. And as I said, it is very smooth. And let's have a look at the weight of the Carry Comp. Weight is 35.5 ounces. So that's right about where it was rated in the Smith & Wesson literature that I looked at before I purchased the revolver. So just a little over 2 pounds for the Carry Comp. One thing I was curious about with the slight change in the dimensions of this newer Model 19, as well as the fully underlugged barrel, is if it was going to fit holsters that I had for my older Model 19s. And I'm happy to say that it does fit this one at least very well. I haven't tried every single holster that I have, and I'm sure some of them are probably going to fit different than others, but at least this one that I've had for a long time fits the new carry comp revolver just like it was made for it. So I'm very happy about that. And along the same lines as holsters, I wanted to make sure that a standard K-frame, in this case HKS speed loader, works with the newly re-engineered Model 19, and yes it does. So no problems with the speed loader or the holster for this new revolver. One thing that some of you may not know is the carry comp is not exactly a new concept at Smith & Wesson. I've shown this catalog / magazine before. This is from 1995. And I can remember reading this catalog back in that year and discovering that the Smith & Wesson Performance Center was putting out a revolver that they then called the Model 19 K-Comp. And you can see a picture of that right there. Now this was the Model 19 prior to the engineering changes that we see in this newer revolver, but still the same concept was present back in 1995. And I've been wanting one of these revolvers literally for over 25 years now, and I finally have one. And that's going to do it for the shop review of my Model 19 carry comp. In part 2 of this series, I'm going to be comparing this revolver to the older Model 19 and Model 66 Combat Magnums that I have in my collection to see just what all has taken place in terms of engineering changes between those older revolvers and this brand new one. As always, if you have any questions or comments about this video, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, if you purchase anything from Optics Planet, be sure to use my discount code, which is... And if you use that discount code, it's good for 5% off anything you purchase from Optics Planet. Also remember, WarbirdBunker.com is making t-shirts for the channel. If you go to WarbirdBunker.com, you can find my t-shirt there, as well as all of Nathan's other firearms and patriotic themed gear. And if you use my discount code at WarbirdBunker.com, which is HRFunk for you, that'll save you 10% off your purchase from WarbirdBunker.com. See you next time, folks. And until then, with a cool revolver, good shooting. Bye-bye.